In this video, we're going to go through how to customize your fonts in the Numenera system in Foundry VTT. So let's go. 1, 2, boom. Welcome to RPG Elite, where we put the RP back into RPG, giving you tools and tips on how to make your RPG experience more immersive and enjoyable. Now, if this is your first time coming to the channel, I want to welcome you. And for all you people who are coming back, what's up? Now, this is part of a series of videos on how to customize details within the Numenera system and Foundry VTT. Now, if you haven't watched the first video, especially if you're new, then of course you want to go right here and get the first video in this series, which really goes over some very basic code editing. I'm talking very fast. You don't have to know CSS. You don't have to know HTML. It helps if you do, because it helps for you to get around the code, but you don't need to. You can just follow exactly what I do in the videos and you should be good to go. Hey, if you like this video and it's adding value, why don't you go ahead and click the subscribe button? And of course, well, you know, if you really like the video, then it's a given that you have to smash the like button. I like saying it like that. I don't know why I like saying it like that. I'm just weird like that, but I like saying it like that. So I'm going to say it again. Smash the like button. Okay. It's out of my system. I'm done now. Now, in this video, we're going to take it a step further by customizing the fonts inside of Foundry VTT in the Numenera system. So it's a little bit more advanced, not much, just a little bit more. And like I said, don't need to know CSS, don't need to know HTML, but it helps. Now, here's a caveat. I am not a developer. Okay, so I am not, I don't make these programs. You got to go over to Solar Bear, David Lacert, which is his real name. You got to go to him for the hard questions and the hard editing, because he did all of the heavy lifting. What we're doing here are just cosmetic things. So enough of me talking. Let's get right into the video. You're about to hear my disembodied voice.
My disembodied voice.
And I am about to show you how to do this. So let's get this started. And here we go.
All right, well, here we are at my computer, and this is the new and improved character sheet that I have for my Numenera campaign, which I am in tomorrow, by the way, because I'm recording this on Friday, and we have it on Saturdays between 12 and 4. So this is all changed up. I got some sweet looking fonts here, and we're going to get into how to make your sheets look sweet just like this. Now, this is going to be part 2, and there's going to be a part 3. So if you want to know how to change all the rest of this stuff, I'll do that in the next video. Okay. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about here is, as a preface, that this is for self-hosted campaigns. That means that somebody's hosting this on their computer. And now, if you're using a service like the Forge, this will be slightly different. It's probably going to take a couple extra steps, but I believe that you can do everything that we're doing here offline, and then you can use something like the import wizard in the Forge to upload your Numenera system. Now, I'm not sure if you're going to have to point the folders to a different location besides a local one once you upload it, but you'll have to test that out and see. But how I am doing this is on a self-hosted campaign, because my computer is dope and can handle it. Okay, so first thing we have to do is, where are we going to get the fonts? Well, there are 2 places that I suggest you go and get fonts if you don't already have something on your system that you like. Now, of course, you can go into your system and look for fonts, but if you don't want to do that, you want to look for something cool, then, or you've never done that before and you just want to go looking for some fonts, 2 places I want you to go. The first is going to be Google Fonts, and that is going to give you plenty of fonts to look through. The second place is Font Squirrel. Now, the reason why I'm choosing these two places, Google Fonts and Font Squirrel, is because these two will allow you to use those fonts for commercial purposes without having to pay for a license. So if further on down the line you want to write a module, you want to sell it, you want to do any of that stuff, and you want to use the fonts, then you won't have to pay for it like Adobe or 1001 fonts. Then you'll have to license every font because you know they're trying to get every penny out of you. You know what I'm saying? So you can go to Google Fonts or you can go to Font Squirrel, and you won't have to worry about that once you download them and install them onto your system. Now, my suggestion is that you find 6 fonts. Try to find 6 fonts. Now, you're not going to install all 6 of them. You're not going to use all 6 of them. You're going to use 3 for like headers and 3 for like a subheader. So keep that in mind as you're choosing. Choose 3 for headers and 3 for subheaders. Then once you've chosen those 6 and downloaded them, it's time to install them. Now, the place that I would install them and download them to is the Numenera folder. So remember, you have to go to inside the data folder of Foundry. You have to go and click on that. You have to click on systems. You have to click on Numenera. And this is where you're going to be as far as the Numenera CSS file. But as far as fonts go, there's another one right here. Click on that, and that's where all your fonts are going to go. And this is where I would download and install them. Now, more than likely, they will be a zip file. I would unzip them here, and I would install them here. Now, when it comes to installing them, you can do that in one of 2 ways. You can double click on the font, and up here it says install, and you can click on that, or you can just right click and it'll say install, and if you're the administrator, it'll be install for all users. Now, all of these I've installed and the majority of them work, but I'm going to use one as an example later on for you guys so you can see how these work. Okay, now once you've installed them into the Numenera folder, and once not install them into the Numenera folder, but install them into your system, but put them in your Numenera folder, because once you install them, it'll automatically go in your fonts on your Windows system. So once you do that and have them in the right folder in Numenera, the next thing we want to do is we want to start messing with code. So pop open your Visual Studio and go to the Numenera file that I just showed you in the Numenera folder and under Systems and Foundry. And what we're going to do is we're going to look straight up at the top here. Now, some of this stuff I have just for demonstration purposes, but I have 3 fonts here that I have installed. Now, the 2 fonts up here, like I said, don't do more than 2 fonts, because you don't want your sheet to get too busy. And when I mean more than 2 fonts, I'm talking about more than 2 like decorative fonts, right? Just because it just will get too busy and confusing and distracting, and you don't want that. You want it to look cool, but you don't want it to be distracting to your players, nor do you want it to be distracting to you. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is that you're going to have to test these fonts because they don't all work. Now, the one thing you're gonna have to do is, as you can see, when you pull up yours, you're only gonna have 1. And I think that the file is Agarima, and that's it. And normally that's not even installed actually inside of it. It's just there. So what you're gonna want to do in order to install a font is, let's go through this because there's some things here that I've added that you don't have. This font family right here is where you're going to name the font. Like when you're working in the code, this is the name that you're going to put in with the quotes. Always put it in with the quotes when you're dealing with this code stuff, folks. This next part is pointing to a local folder, and in yours, it doesn't have that. But I have found that when I add this, more of my fonts work. So I would suggest that you add this local and do it exactly as it looks here. with the quotes and everything exactly as it looks. The color should be the same, because if they're not the same, then something is wrong. Make sure you put the comma right here. And then for the URL, which is already there, this is going to point to where it is in the fonts folder, what exact font it is pointing to. And then the format is going to be whether it's an open type font or whether it is a true type font. And I messed up this right here. Put a T there. Okay. Now, we're going to do an experiment here with this SS villains. It's called suicide villains, something like that. Here it is. Suicide super villains. That's what the name of the font is. But what I am going to use inside of the code is SS villains. Now, in order to test this to see if it actually is going to work, I'm going to go to the first one down here under form.numenera, because this is kind of like the main font for all of it, right? And it's going to go down the line here. So if this font does not work, it's going to switch to the next font, which is Gil Sans. Gil Sans doesn't work, it'll switch to the next one, so forth and so on. This is normally for those who work with websites and things like that. Different browsers will and won't display certain fonts, and so you have to test it out. But this local up here actually helps for efficiency's sake, so that more fonts will work. But I'm going to put in SS villains. So I'm going to put SS villains. And then I am going to press Control S, which saves it. And then I'm going to come back here to my Foundry, and I'm going to press F5. We're going to be doing that a lot, and you're going to be doing that a lot to test and make sure to see if it works or if it doesn't work. So I'm going to press F5, and you always want to put the font in, and this is to test it. This is just to test to see if the font is working. You're probably not going to keep it here. You just want to make sure that it works inside of Numenera. So I'm going to go back to the character sheet. I'm going to see what happens. Okay, now this is what happened. This is not the font. We know this. So how do we know this? Well, let's go back to the font inside of the folder. And when we double click on it, that's the font. So it's not working. All right. And this is one of those times where what happens inside of the code is that it will skip SS villains because that one's not working, and it will go to the next one. So what we're actually seeing on the sheet right now is Gil Sans. So we know that SS villains doesn't work. So what we would have to do is move on to the next one. And that is how that works. Now I want to switch this back to Tetra because Tetra looked dope. And I'm going to delete the other part. SS villains. I'm going to press Control S. I'm going to go back to my Foundry. I'm going to press S5. F5, I should say, not S, F. What's going on, bro? And then we're back where we should be. So that is how you go and you test out certain fonts to see if they are working. Now, once you have a font and it's working, then you're going to have to go and put it in the code and test it out again to see how it looks. For example, if I wanted to change this up here, right? Like I'm changing this up here, and let's say I want to change it to this, which is Azonix is the name of this, but I want this to be Azonix. So I'm going to go back to my code, and the place that you're going to look for is form.numenera H1 character. Now I've done this so much that I know basically where this is. Now the way that you're going to search for it though, you can just push search. Oops, go back, push search, and it's going to be form.numenera which is just about everything. Form.numenera, make sure it's exact. Then what's next is a space. Then you're going to put H1 dot character. Oop, I forgot my dot. All right. And these are going to come up, and the first one is the one that you're going to hit. And now you'll see that the font family here is Tetra, which is what it is now. And the font size is 21 pixels. So let's do a little experiment here, and let's change it to Ozonics. Press Control S, and then go back to your Foundry, press F5 for the refresh. And let's come here and take a look at it. Okay, now you see at the top, it changed to Ozonics. Now, I don't like it that it's on 2 lines here because it just doesn't look good. So I'm just going to change that back. And I want to look at something real quick. So font family obviously is for the ones that you're going to be using, and font size, you'll have to mess with that. Like if I actually wanted to keep that, then instead of 21 pixels, that's what PX means, I would probably take it down to around 16 or something like that and test it just to make sure that it's all on one line and everything. But I am actually just going to change this to Tetra, or back to Tetra, because I just love that font. Now, it always has a number 1 up here that lets you know that you need to save. Just a little side note there. Press Control S, go back to Foundry, press F5 for the refresh. And we are back in business up here. Once that disappears, there we go. So it's back in business up here. Now I've already tested everything in here, and down in the description below, I have what you should put into the search bar when you want to change certain things. And I have about 6 things that you might want to change as far as maybe the font family or the font size. Now, here's a little tip. If when you put these in, it doesn't have a font family, or it doesn't have a font size, or both, that means I put it in, and that means that you need to put it in order to have the right font that you want. If you don't put it in, well, then of course it's going to be a little difficult for you to do the customization that you want. So make sure that you, like I said, you need a little bit, but this is a little bit of coding, just a small bit, but it's not that big of a deal. It's just font family and font size. The font family is going to define what font you want, and the font size is you're going to have to play with that in terms of how big you want the font. And that's it, folks. That is the basics of adding and customizing fonts inside of your Numenera system in Foundry VTT.
Well, there you have it, folks. Customizing the fonts in the Numenera system in Foundry VTT, the meat and potatoes of it. Now, in our next video, which now I'm guessing here, I don't know, I'm guessing that this will be the last video in the series. Who knows, unless you make it longer and say, hey, can you do this? Or hey, can you do that? And if I can, I'll try, folks, because like I say, I am your servant. But first, I'm the servant of Shiloh. What? Okay, never mind with that. In the next video, what we're going to do, we're going to change the dice so it'll look like mine, or teach you how to do that in your system. And we're also going to do something that's very basic. I had somebody ask me in the questions in the comments in one of my videos on how to make the icons look like my icons look on my sheet. This is something that is very simple, really, actually. It just takes a little bit of work as far as research and stuff. So we'll go over that as well. And I might have maybe, I'm not going to promise this though, but I might have a little special surprise in terms of a little bit more customization that will just add that little pizzazz to your sessions. So until next time, folks, you know what I'm going to say. Happy gaming.